guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new revenge content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "My Truck Can't Leave? Neither can yours." I lived in a high-rise apartment building and my truck wouldn't fit in the underground parkade. It didn't have a lift kit, but it was a 2500 heavy-duty with slightly larger tires, and it did have a headache rack that stuck above the cab a few inches. The apartment had a very limited number of outdoor stalls at the rear of the building, one of which I was assigned. One Saturday afternoon I was going out with some buds from work, and when I exited the building there was a 53 trailer backed up to the building with 4 guys moving furniture in. The truck was kind of jackknifed in and the trailer was less than a foot from my front bumper. My truck was also backed in with another vehicle behind it. I was trapped. I asked the first guy the first saw if they could move the truck. He said I had to ask his boss, asked which one that was, and then waited for the described person. After waiting 15 minutes, asked a different guy where the boss was and was told he was upstairs, supervising. Thanks. Went in search of the guy and asked him to move his truck so I could get out. Truth be told, he only needed to straighten out his backup job and I could have snuck by, but he flat out refused, and frankly was quite rude about it. Told me tough crap, duck off and wait. Went back downstairs to do just that, and as I was sitting in my truck, smoking and listening to tunes, I noticed there was a padlock hanging off the side door of the trailer and there was a simply huge ring of keys stuck in it. I waited until there were none of the movers around and I took the ring of keys, put them inside my jacket, and then went and threw them into some bushes some distance away. Then I went back up to my apartment and called my buddies to tell them I wouldn't be joining them. About 4 hours later the building manager called me about the keys being missing. The movers were done and wanted to leave. I told them I didn't know what he was talking about. He asked me to meet him in the back lot, which I did. Boss mover was all up in my face saying he knew I took his ring, and there were over 75 keys on it and most were one of a kind. I just played dumb. Building management suggested we look at the surveillance video. I was a little scared. I didn't realize there were cameras back there, but I played it cool. We all went to the office and watched the footage, but the cockeyed way he parked the trailer blocked most of the camera's field of view. You could see me get out of my truck and walk towards the trailer, but couldn't see me actually touch the keys and then walk back beside my truck, exiting the video near the back of the vehicle, but there was nothing in my hands. The footage proved nothing. Boss man called the cops, but they too watched the footage, asked me if I had the keys, which I didn't, so I said no, and said there was nothing further to be done. I asked if we were done and when I was going to be able to drive my truck. I was told to rent a car and submit my receipts, which I did. The truck moved the next day, but the trailer was left, perhaps out of spite, at the same angle, blocking me in, until Wednesday. When I was finally able to move my truck, I noted the side was scratched up and the driver's mirror was hanging down. We went back to the videotape and clearly saw the boss man walking back and forth beside my truck before taking the mirror in both hands and breaking it off. It was my turn to call the cops. The moving company ended up paying my car rental tab, $375, plus $5,500 worth of bodywork, paint, decals, and a new mirror. I hoped it also cost a bundle to replace all those keys. I lived there for 2 more years after that, and I would check on the key ring from time to time. They were still there the day I moved out. Next one is titled, "Grumpy Neighbors Ruined My Birthday. My dad never let them enjoy their backyard ever again." We are going a ways back here. Think I was 8 years old, so that puts this story in the late 90s. I grew up on a busy street in a suburb. All the houses are basically right next to each other. On one side of the house we had the grumpiest, most miserable old couple in their 70s as neighbors. We have a big family and enjoyed cookouts during the summer months. They hated us having parties and we weren't even doing anything out of the ordinary. Just the type of people that would witch about basically anything for no good reason. Well, it's my 8th birthday party and we have our typical big family get-together. Well, my favorite gift that year ended up being a Globetrotters basketball. We had a hoop and had a blast playing around. Eventually the day goes sideways when my ball bounces over grouchy neighbor's fence. All that separates our driveway, basketball court from their backyard is a stockade fence. Well, a whole neighbor was outside, proceeds to grab the ball, take it into his shed and stab it with a screwdriver. I'd never seen my father so angry in my life. But he's not an idiot and didn't do anything stupid. From that day on he never let them enjoy their backyard ever again. We could see their yard from our house, and anytime they would go outside he would go out back, crank up his air compressor in the garage and slam a basketball against the backboard as hard as he could until they went inside. Didn't even pretend for a second he was doing anything but making as much noise as possible. He never gave up, never stopped until the grumpy guy eventually died 2 years later. We take petty revenge seriously in this family. Thanks, Pops. Next one is titled, Taxi Driver is an Ass, Gets Stranded. It's been a few months now, so I doubt he will be able to track me down. I was leaving Walmart after getting a few things and I started to cross the road out front. There is even a sign that says yield to pedestrians. Apparently I was taking too long because this taxi comes speeding up and has to brake to not hit me. I won't say I crossed at a perfect 90-degree angle to the road, but it was easily over 75 degrees, not like I was walking down the road like some people do. So he drives up fast, slams on brakes, and while I'm still startled he lays on the horn. I get it together, slam my fist down on his hood and flip him off. Probably not the best quick decision, but still. This idiot gets out of his car and starts walking towards me. I'm a little scared at this point, so I walk around the passenger side of his car away from him coming. Now the good part. When I get to the driver's side, the door is open and it's running. I locked the doors and closed the driver door. The look on his face when he realized he was locked out. Instead of going to my car, I go back into Walmart and walk towards a security guard standing in the front of the store. I tell him what's going on as the cab driver just goes back outside. The security guard busts out laughing. He escorted me out the other door to my car, and he was still parked there. I don't think he saw me. I drove to the far end of the parking lot and watched him stand there like an idiot. It looked like someone finally let him use their phone. I left after about 10 minutes of watching. I so wanted to drive by and blow a kiss or something, but he would have seen my car and plate. Next one is titled, He Knows How to Borrow Money but Doesn't Know How to Tell the Truth. Had a colleague in the Volunteer Armed Forces, National Guardish, who would never lift a finger unless something good came to him, and he always expected people to help him. He was a kinda poor soul, who had been lost most of his life, never really had a job, and had no education. But he did find some meaning in the uniform. He had huge issues with money. Whenever he got his welfare check, he would spend it all within a week, on video games, a new TV, or something like that. The rest of the month he would beg scraps of the rest of us and borrow money. He always paid back the money, but he always had such a big debt to the rest of us, that when he finally got the welfare check most of it would disappear in seconds. Eventually, he got kicked out of his apartment for forgetting to pay rent. He was of course furious that the city council wouldn't pay the bills for him, because, it's not my fault I forgot to pay. Our platoon leader chooses to go above and beyond for this guy and choose to take him in. Not only having 2 teenagers in the house, he now had a third and even more useless, adult teenager, living with him. They agreed that the platoon leader's wife would help him with finances, that he didn't have to pay for food, and that the rent he paid the platoon leader didn't even cover half of the expenses they had, with an extra mouth to feed. As you might be guessing, the guy has some serious issues with life in general, and especially money. The guy was like 35 and still couldn't manage on his own. At some point, he started not paying tickets on public transportation. Sure thing he would get a fine, but being on welfare, he had no way of paying it, so he just didn't. He even boasted to his squad of being so clever, as he was riding, free of charge, when the rest of us was paying a lot to get on a train. He literally told me, "It's no problem. I just consider it a loan from the government." I told him in no uncertain terms that what he was doing was going to land him in so much trouble, he would never in his life get out of it. His reaction was to completely cut off any communication with me, despite both of us being NCOs and having to communicate on a regular basis. It's completely fair of him to think of me as an idiot for sticking my nose in his affairs, but when it starts to hurt the company and the soldiers are complaining about a hostile work environment, and talking about stopping as volunteers, things are out of hand. I let the platoon leader know what was going on, telling him that not only was this guy boasting of committing a felony crime, he was also refusing to talk to anyone who called him out on it. The place took note of it and went up the system with it. At the same time, I found out he was borrowing money from a couple of new soldiers and not paying them back. I told the platoon leader, who told his wife. The platoon leader and his wife decided to pay the soldiers back from their own pocket, as one of the guys was studying and didn't have a dime to spend on anything. At the same time they raised the rent he was paying for living in their house, to cover the money they had paid back on his behalf. He of course got super furious and started yelling at the platoon leader's wife, who kicked him out straight away. He called the platoon leader straight away, crying on the phone and saying how sorry he was. They let him stay. Being on welfare, you have to do these pointless courses in writing a resume, or you have to do some kind of practical activation job, like picking up trash or sweeping the streets. He started not going to these things, stating that he had to go on some super important military drill and the city people believed him. Only thing is, being a volunteer force, everything is evenings or weekends. I called the city council, gave them an anonymous tip that there wasn't any training or drills. They called him and gave him 1 hour to meet, or he would get taken off welfare immediately. Remember the story of him borrowing money from broke students and not paying back? Well, a month later he did the same thing. Again I called the place, who told his wife. The guy once again got super angry at the platoon leader's wife. Platoon leader went straight home, but didn't say a thing. Place waited until the guy left to go hang out with a friend, and then took all the guy's stuff and threw it in the yard and called a locksmith to come and change the lock straight away. The guy got super annoyed and started telling everyone that I and the place were against him. Well, it wasn't really a lie. Being homeless kinda sucks, and being on the council watch list for potential welfare scammers sucks too, so I was actually pretty happy and thought I had my revenge. The guy got so annoyed he started calling my work and writing my internet friends outside the armed forces, telling me how big of an idiot I was. I had decided that I had made enough phone calls, but this kinda broke my brain. I straight away called both the city council and the national tax authorities to tell them of his free or charged train trips. The city and the national authorities started working together, sharing the info they had on him. Last I heard of the guy was when I read a headline in the newspaper of a local man matching his age who got a 60 days jail sentence and a $40,000 United States dollars fine for systematic cheating with train tickets. Having committed a felony, technically 300 felonies, and going to jail, he lost his security clearance and got kicked out of the volunteer forces. Next one is titled, "A Simple Way I Get Petty Revenge on a Whole Customers." There is literally no way for me to get in trouble. This is super small and they probably don't even notice, but it's enough to put a smile on my smug face. I work at a grocery store as a cashier, and naturally come in contact with plenty of interesting people. So, because I'm a petty witch and feel the need to take some sort of revenge, I came up with this. This is something you could probably do too, and I promise it's literally impossible to get in trouble. So basically, if a customer is being a real pain in the butt and they happen to pay in cash, I'll go out of my way to give them dirty change. Not just dirty, but the crustiest, most chipped and ugly coins I can possibly find. And I hand them this disgusting mess of coins and bills that look like they passed through an animal. They don't particularly notice, because it's just how money is. And sure, maybe they did notice, but what are they supposed to complain about? I gave them their money. Excuse me, she gave me dirty money. Money's dirty, what did you expect? It's enough that I can have a small feeling of justice, and small enough that I can get away with it for the rest of my life. So next time a customer is an a-hole to you, give them the most disgusting and vile change you can find. Last one is titled, "Front of the Queue, Still Made to Wait." My parents had arrived back from a holiday and were waiting in the queue for passport control. A group of young males had also left that flight and joined the same queue. They were quite rowdy and were shouting at the staff to let them through first. Eventually the staff got sick and put them through to the front. They cheered at their victory and went through passport control. The conveyor belt started for the baggage reclaim. My parents were unfortunate that they had to wait a long time for their bags. But so did the lads. My parents finally got their bags, loaded them onto a trolley and went to leave the airport. The last thing they saw was the lads still waiting at an almost empty conveyor belt. Clearly, the staff got the information from the passports and held their bags. Thanks for listening.